Compound is a 2025 novel by Aisling Rawle. This is her debut novel. Can't remember how I found out about this one. Might have seen it on Goodreads, might have found it on Instagram, might have found it on Libby after scrolling through and looking for something to listen to, and the premise seemed interesting. Basically, a bunch of people on a compound taking part in a reality show as, and I quote, "the world is falling apart outside." The implication from the summary was that this was an extreme reality show taking place in a dystopian society. Goodreads even has it tagged as dystopian, so I was like, okay, cool, give me some of that reality TV show trash in a dystopian setting, I'm ready. It, wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. So, in the spirit of limiting spoilers, the basic plot is this. 10 women and what ends up being 9 men are on a compound in the desert. Basically, the show knocks you out and dumps you there. The women end up closer to the compound and get there first, whereas the men get put out farther into the desert and have to hike there. We follow Lily, a self-admitted, not very intelligent and materialistic girl who's bored and frustrated with her unexciting, mediocre life working retail. The compound represents a lavish future where she wants for nothing. If she wins, she gets to stay for as long as she likes and gets almost all of her wishes fulfilled. I think some of the more outlandish ones are denied. Like, she can't ask the house to get blown up, I don't think. You could say the show is a combination of Big Brother and The Bachelor. A man and a woman must be sharing a bed by dawn the next morning. If you're not, you're eliminated. Challenges are given by the show throughout the day. Some of those challenges are for the house, and some are personal challenges that the contestants can't disclose to their housemates. A house challenge could be anything from everyone having to submerge themselves in the pool for a full 60 seconds to eliminating another house member. A personal challenge could be anything from revealing a deep dark secret to another contestant, apropos of nothing, to humiliating yourself on camera. House challenges get new things for the house, furniture, food, etc. Personal challenges grant smaller gifts and luxuries to the individual, such as combs or jewelry. If one is granted these things, they're expected to look into a camera and thank the brand that gave it to them. There are some limits, however. Lily mentions that the show had, in previous seasons, given personal challenges to contestants telling them to seduce other contestants, but this was controversial and they stopped. Contestants are forbidden from harming each other until the final 5, I think. They're not allowed to kill each other, but they are allowed to get somewhat violent. The producers, in general, aren't going to let anyone die on their show. So that's the backbone of the plot. What follows is Lily navigating the show to the best of her ability, developing alliances and romances and friendships and enemies and what have you along the way. The story itself was not bad. I did basically enjoy it, but I do think that it did fall flat in a lot of respects, especially for something that was, to my understanding, a dystopian novel. Let me be 100% clear. This book is not a dystopia, unless you're defining it the way that social media defines a dystopia, since people on the internet throw the word dystopia at any even slightly upsetting trend or phenomenon in modern society. Rich people getting dressed up in weird outfits and going to the Met Gala while the rest of us struggle to pay our bills isn't a dystopia. That's rich out-of-touch assholes being rich out-of-touch assholes. That has existed literally forever. Children being raised on iPads isn't dystopian. It's shitty, lazy parenting. Needing a subscription for a printer isn't dystopian. It's a shitty business practice that you can easily solve by not using that printer brand. I assure you that if you get off your phone, and particularly fucking TikTok, and go touch grass, you'll see the world isn't nearly as hellish as it looks on the internet. My boomer ranting aside, the compound only qualifies as a dystopia if you view it through a terminally online lens. There are only 3 things that make the show alarming. That violence is permissible when there are only 5 contestants left, that the producers endanger the contestants as a form of punishment, depriving them of food and water, setting a fire at one point, and that the producers would ask contestants to do dangerous things like hold their breaths underwater for any length of time. Everyone has to do it for the rewards, so there's incentive for the group to pressure one person into doing it. There's danger on the show, but it is repeatedly reinforced that the producers aren't going to let anybody die. This fact was repeated so often that I naturally assumed that it would be subverted at some point, but nope. The producers really do refuse to let anyone die on the show. The only 2 things in the book that possibly hint to the world outside of the compound being dystopian is several references to a war, which Lily's father is fighting in, and 2 or 3 characters referencing that everyone's going to be dead in 10 to 15 years. but there is zero context or detail given to either of these statements. I don't know what's happening with the war. I don't know how long it's been going on. I don't know who's involved in the conflict, nothing. And everyone being dead in 10 to 15 years? No elaboration whatsoever. Don't know if that's meant to be a reference to the war or to, like, climate change or other factors. Not a clue what we're talking about or why I should take it seriously. I need to drive home here that independent of those two things, every other bit of evidence we receive about the world outside of the compound suggests that this is just literally the normal world. Lily works retail. The other contestants all have regular jobs. Social media exists. TV exists. Some vague references to politics are mentioned, but absolutely nothing about those brief references suggests that any of the characters are living under a repressive government. If this book is meant to be a dystopia, it just does not go far enough. It's the real world with a few extra oddities, and I'm sorry, but that's not a dystopia. It does seem to want to be one, though. There's a quote at the beginning from Animal Farm, specifically concerning the character of Molly. Molly's a pony, and in the context of Animal Farm being a metaphor for the communist revolution in Russia, she's basically a metaphorical representation of the Russian bourgeois class, as in the people who are living in comfort and can afford luxuries and don't want any significant social change because they might lose those things. In the book, she actually takes off pretty quickly after the farm is taken over by the animals because she doesn't like the change. Lily is, pretty transparently, the same character as Molly. She acknowledges that she's not very smart, the story establishes that her priorities are out of whack, and she's willing to claw and fight to get the luxury she's always wanted. On its face, the comparison to Molly's character works. They're both not noticeably book smart, they prioritize luxury and comfort over most other things, and they fundamentally don't understand why other people around them are upset with their circumstances or don't value the material things that they do. I'd argue that Lily's characterization is also meant to be a metaphor for the kind of, like, TikTok brain rot, I'm just a girl types who eat, sleep, and breathe consumerism. It's not quite as obvious, but Lily's shallowness and lack of understanding for why her housemates are suffering mentally and emotionally, and why they don't value winning quite as much as her, comes across as a critique of overly materialistic people who think that filling the void with stuff is going to cure their deep dissatisfaction with their lives. Instead of prioritizing meaningful relationships, Lily chooses the prizes promised by winning the game. And we get some foreshadowing that she won't be satisfied in the end. Lily tells us a story about a trampoline she wanted as a child that her mother couldn't afford but still got her anyway. She badly wanted it until she got it. Then she got bored of it within a few months. Not only does this foreshadow how it might play out for her if she wins the competition, it also foreshadows the ending of a romantic relationship she gets into. My point is, if I'm meant to read into this as deeply as Animal Farm, then it falls flat. The stakes are just not high enough. Molly's prioritization of ribbons and sugar cubes in Animal Farm is seen as completely out of touch because of the intense conditions that the farm animals were living in, conditions that Molly, as a show pony, isn't necessarily cognizant of. And given how the book progresses, you could argue that while her reasoning for doing so was flawed, she was smart to get out of Dodge before things got worse for her. But again, the compound stakes are just not that high in the grand scheme of things. Not on Animal Farm's level, anyway. Lily works as a commentary on shallow materialism, but at the end of the day, her messed up priorities really only end up screwing her over in the end. Yeah, she hurts a few people along the way, but not in a particularly catastrophic way. No one dies, no one has their lives ruined, at least that we're made aware of. And because the book declines to develop its world and lore as a unique dystopia, I can't analyze Lily's role within that context. I can't analyze her role in a dystopian society the way I can Molly. And unlike Molly, whose choice to leave the farm was actually a good one given how things unfurl later on, things never get so bad in the compound. Again, the tension is ruined by the repeated and proven reassurances that the producers might let things get hairy, but they won't actually let anybody die. Again, had this expectation been subverted, it would have done wonders for the stakes and the tension, but it proved out across several scenarios, and eventually I just said, okay, so nobody is actually in any real danger here. Yes, there's danger of injury, but injury really only becomes frightening in a scenario like this when it could lead to serious consequences like death or dismemberment. The main conflict of the novel, the competition, is ridiculously low stakes for a supposedly dystopian society. You just go home. Yeah, maybe you get judged for what you did on the show, but that's typical of real-world reality shows, too. The low stakes of a supposedly dystopian competition really stand out to me because as of the intended release of this video, there are two dystopian Stephen King movies that have come out: The Long Walk and The Running Man. I've seen the former. The latter hasn't come out as of my recording of this video, but both concern themselves with characters participating in deadly competitions. In The Long Walk, several teenage boys participate in a non-stop walk. Once you start, there's no way out but winning or death. In The Running Man, it's a guy who signs up to be hunted down in the hopes of winning a crazy amount of money to help his sick daughter. Also, by the way, the original novel for The Running Man was written in 1982 and set in 2025. The more you know. These are, in my opinion, good dystopian concepts. Whether you feel the movies or original books carried them off is whatever, but as concepts, they work very well. These are high-stakes competitions that seem completely insane to the average reader. The boys in The Long Walk are signing up to walk until they die or win, which means they live in a society that is okay with young boys being, I cannot stress this enough, literally murdered in cold blood when they are too tired to walk anymore. The Running Man is killed if he's caught, and the entire population is participating in the hunt. In the book, it's made clear that the show is designed to distract the public from just how bad their society has declined. The competition in the compound is just not on that level. The competition itself is not extreme enough, and we're not given enough information about the outside world to contrast it to. If the world outside were just nightmarishly terrible, being able to stay in the compound and have all your wishes granted would explain the desperation Lily and some of the characters have to stay in the game. But in the absence of that, I can only say that their decisions reflect mostly on their characters, not necessarily on the world that they live in. Instead of thinking, wow, this horrible dystopian world has reduced people to animals fighting over little luxuries, I mostly end up thinking, wow, these incredibly messed up, shallow, materialistic people are doing stupid and hurtful shit for a few little luxuries, even though a lot of these things would be available to them if they just went home and paid for them with their own money. It didn't help that only some of the characters were ruthless in their pursuit of victory. A lot of them were just normal people that eventually hit a very reasonable limit at what they would do to win. So overall, I didn't hate the compound, but as it had billed itself as dystopian fiction, it just felt very lukewarm to me. Didn't go far enough with the concept. Lily was an interesting character. I enjoyed reading about her. The competition was interesting, enough so at any rate for me to stay engaged until the end of the book, but it wasn't the best thing I've ever read.